Jake Morrison stepped off the transport shuttle and immediately felt the difference. The air on the Valthern homeworld was thicker than Earth's, humid and warm. It carried a strange scent, something like cinnamon mixed with copper. He adjusted the collar of his security uniform and looked around the landing pad. The Valthern Royal Palace rose in the distance, a massive structure of dark stone and gleaming metal. It looked ancient and modern at the same time. Spires reached toward the purple sky, and bridges connected towers that seemed to float without support. Jake had seen pictures, but they didn't capture the scale of it. The palace was bigger than any building he'd seen on Earth. Impressive, isn't it? Lisa Grant walked up beside him. She was the human ambassador to the Valthern Empire, a small woman with sharp eyes and an easy smile. Wait until you see the inside. These people have been building for 10,000 years. Jake nodded. He'd been a Marine for 12 years before going private. He'd seen plenty of strange places and stranger people. But this was his first time working off-world. Earth had only joined the Galactic community 5 years ago. Humans were still the new kids, and most species treated them like children playing at being adults. What do I need to know? Jake asked as they walked toward a waiting vehicle. It hovered a few inches off the ground, humming softly. The Valthern are proud, Lisa said. Very proud. They're one of the oldest civilizations in this part of the galaxy. They see themselves as superior to most other species, especially us. We're primitives in their eyes, barely figured out faster than light travel. Great, Jake muttered. So they think we're stupid? Not stupid. Just young, unproven. Lisa climbed into the vehicle. But Queen Ashira is different. She's only been on the throne for 2 years. She's trying to open up relations with other species. Her father was very isolationist. She wants to change that. The vehicle lifted smoothly and started moving toward the palace. Jake watched the city pass by below. The Valthern themselves were insectoid, with 6 limbs and hard exoskeletons that gleamed in shades of dark green and black. They moved with precise, efficient motions. Everything about their architecture and city planning showed the same precision. Clean lines. Perfect symmetry. Nothing wasted. The Royal Guard doesn't like me much, Lisa continued. They think having aliens near the Queen is an insult. But the Queen insisted on having human security consultation. She's curious about our methods. Our methods? Jake raised an eyebrow. Apparently we do things differently than everyone else. More flexible. Less rigid. The Valthern military has used the same tactics for thousands of years. They work, but they don't adapt well to new situations. Jake filed that information away. It might be useful later. The palace was even more impressive up close. The walls were smooth and dark, carved with symbols Jake couldn't read. Valthern guards stood at every entrance, their body armor making them look even more intimidating. Each one carried a plasma rifle and a curved blade that Jake learned was called a war scythe. Traditional weapon. Ceremonial, but still deadly. Inside, the palace was cooler. The halls were wide enough to drive a truck through. Everything was built on a larger scale than human buildings. The Valthern were bigger than humans, averaging 7 feet tall. They needed the space. Lisa showed him to the human embassy section, a smaller building within the palace complex. It had been modified for human comfort. Normal gravity, normal air mixture, furniture that didn't require climbing. You'll be based here, Lisa explained. But the Queen wants you to consult with the palace security team twice a week. Commander Zeltar runs the Royal Guard. He's professional but cold. Don't expect him to be friendly. Jake met Commander Zeltar 3 days later. The Valthern officer stood rigid, his exoskeleton polished to a mirror shine. His eyes were compound, multifaceted, impossible to read. He looked Jake up and down with what felt like disdain. You are the human security expert, Zeltar said. His voice came out in clicks and whistles, translated by a device on his chest. I do not understand why Queen Ashira requested this consultation. The Royal Guard has protected the monarchy for 6,000 years without failure. I'm just here to observe and share ideas, Jake said calmly. No disrespect to your traditions. Zelthar's mandibles twitched. Observe then, but do not interfere. Jake spent the next few weeks watching the Royal Guard operate. They were impressive, no doubt about it. Each guard was selected from the best warriors in the Empire. Their training took 10 years. They moved with perfect coordination, never breaking formation. Their discipline was absolute. But Jake also noticed problems. They were rigid. Everything followed protocol. If something unexpected happened, they hesitated while waiting for orders. Their tactics assumed they would always have superior numbers and firepower. They never considered fighting at a disadvantage. He mentioned this to Lisa one evening over dinner in the embassy cafeteria. That's because they've never really been tested, she said. The Valthern have been the dominant military power in this region for centuries. They win through overwhelming force. They don't know how to fight scrappy. Every military gets tested eventually, Jake said. When it happens, they might not be ready. He didn't know how right he was. Jake's meetings with Queen Ashira started a month into his assignment. She surprised him by requesting a private security briefing. Commander Zelthar looked furious but couldn't refuse a direct order from the Queen. Queen Ashira was younger than Jake expected. The Valthern aged differently than humans, but she had an energy about her that felt youthful. Her exoskeleton was lighter in color than most Valthern, almost jade green. She wore minimal decoration, unlike the elaborate robes he'd seen in pictures of her father. Security Officer Morrison, she said, her translated voice smooth and curious. Commander Zelthar tells me you have been observing the Royal Guard. Yes, Your Majesty. Jake stood at attention. He'd learned the proper protocols. He says you find our methods inadequate. There was no anger in her voice, just interest. Not inadequate, Jake said carefully. Just different. Humans fight differently because we have to. We're usually outmatched, smaller, weaker. So we learn to be unpredictable, to adapt, to use terrain and psychology as weapons. The Queen tilted her head. Interesting. The Valthern value precision and order. We do not believe in unpredictability. With respect, Your Majesty, your enemies won't follow your rules. Something shifted in her posture. If Jake had to guess, she was amused. Perhaps that is why I wanted a human perspective. Tell me, do you believe the Royal Guard could be defeated? Jake hesitated. This was dangerous territory. Any force can be defeated if the attacker chooses the right circumstances. Superior numbers, surprise, willingness to accept casualties. The Royal Guard is excellent, but they're designed to fight honorable battles against honorable enemies. And if the enemy is not honorable, then honor can get you killed, Your Majesty. The Queen was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You speak plainly. I appreciate that. Most beings are too afraid to be honest with a queen. Over the following weeks, Jake noticed tension in the palace, whispered conversations that stopped when he approached. Guards who seemed distracted. He mentioned it to Commander Zelthar, who dismissed his concerns. The Royal Guard is loyal, Zelthar said coldly. Your human paranoia is not needed here. But Jake knew the signs. He'd seen them before in unstable situations. Something was building. He increased security around the human embassy and sent a coded message to the human cruiser in orbit, the Defiant. Captain Ryan Blake acknowledged the warning but couldn't do more without evidence of a threat. Jake started spending more time in the palace, watching and learning. He mapped the layout in his head, identified defensive positions, located weapons caches, old habits from his Marine days. Always have an exit plan, always know where the threats could come from. He saw General Korthos once from a distance. The Valthern general was massive, even by their standards. His exoskeleton was scarred from battles. He commanded the primary military forces outside the capital. Jake heard whispers that Korthos opposed the Queen's reforms, that he thought opening relations with other species would weaken the Empire. Lisa confirmed it over dinner. Korthos represents the old guard, literally. He thinks Ashira is too young, too idealistic. There's talk he has support in the military. Talk of what? Jake pressed. Nothing concrete. Just rumors. But in politics, rumors can be as dangerous as weapons. Jake requested another meeting with the Queen. This time she received him in a smaller chamber, less formal. Commander Zelthar was not present. You are concerned, the Queen observed. It wasn't a question. I am, Your Majesty. I'm hearing things. Seeing things. Signs of discontent. General Korthos, she said simply. You have heard the rumors too. Yes. Do you believe he would move against me? Jake chose his words carefully. I believe he might if he thinks he can succeed. The question is whether he thinks your guards would stand with you or with him. The Queen's mandibles clicked softly. The Royal Guard has served the throne for thousands of years. Their loyalty is absolute. It is written into our culture, our laws, our very identity. Loyalty is tested when standing costs something, Jake said. When it's easy, everyone is loyal. When it's hard, you find out who really means it. The explosions continued, each one closer than the last. Jake grabbed Lisa's arm and pulled her toward the nearest exit. The Great Hall had erupted into chaos. Valthern nobles were pushing past each other, their usual dignity forgotten in panic. Their exoskeletons clattered against each other as they fled. "What's happening?" Lisa shouted over the noise. "Coup," Jake said. "Get to the embassy. Lock it down. Send a message to the Defiant. What about you? I'm going to see what we're dealing with." Lisa nodded and ran. Jake turned back toward the throne area. Commander Zelthar was shouting orders to his guards. They were forming up, following their training. But Jake could see the tension in their movements. The Royal Guard had trained for thousands of years, but they'd never actually faced a real threat inside the palace walls. Another explosion rocked the building. This one took out the shield generators on the eastern wall. Jake knew what that meant. Whoever was attacking had inside information. They knew exactly what to hit first. A junior officer rushed up to Zelthar, speaking rapidly in the clicking Valthern language. Jake's translator picked up fragments. Military units. General Korthos. Thousands of soldiers. Palace surrounded. Zelthar's mandibles clicked in what Jake had learned was distress. The commander turned to Queen Ashira, who had not moved from her throne. She stood tall, watching her guards with those compound eyes. "Your Majesty, we must evacuate you," Zelthar said. "General Korthos has betrayed the throne. His forces are attacking the palace. How many?" the Queen asked calmly. "Reports say 5,000 soldiers with armor support and air units. They've disabled our shields and communications. The palace garrison number's only 400. Jake did the math. 10-to-1 odds. Not good. "The Royal Guard will protect you," Zelthar continued. "We will hold them while you escape through the ancient tunnels." "And go where?" the Queen asked. "If Korthos has 5,000 soldiers here, he controls the capital. There is nowhere to run. Then we fight," Zelthar said, but Jake heard the uncertainty in his voice. The ground shook. Something big had just breached the outer walls. Plasma fire lit up the windows. Jake moved to look outside and saw what they were facing. Korthos hadn't just brought soldiers. He'd brought everything. Gunships circled overhead. Heavy weapons were being set up in the courtyards. This wasn't just a coup. It was an invasion. Another officer arrived, this one bleeding from a wound on his carapace. "Commander, the East Garrison has fallen. The enemy is inside the palace. They're executing anyone found protecting the Queen. They're offering amnesty to those who lay down their weapons." Jake saw it happen, saw the moment everything changed. The Royal Guard had been trained to fight honorable battles, to die with dignity in glorious combat. But this wasn't glorious. This was a massacre. The guards looked at each other. They looked at their commander. They looked at the Queen, and Jake saw doubt creep into their eyes. "We cannot win this," one of the guards said quietly. "It is suicide to stay." Another agreed. Zelthar turned on them. "We are the Royal Guard. We do not abandon the throne. The ancient laws permit tactical withdrawal," a third guard said, "to preserve strength for future battle. It is not dishonor to retreat when victory is impossible." Jake watched the oldest trick in the book. The rationalization, the way people talked themselves into abandoning duty when it got hard. He'd seen it before. Humans did it too, but he'd hoped the legendary Royal Guard would be different. "There are 5,000 enemies," one guard said. "We are 300. Our shields are down. Our communications are cut. The garrison has fallen. To stay is to die for nothing. To stay is to die for our Queen," Zelthar said. But his voice had lost its certainty. More guards began speaking. The murmur grew. Jake could see the tide turning. Fear was contagious. It spread through the ranks like a disease. These warriors had never faced real fear before. Their entire lives had been spent in training and ceremony. They'd never been tested. Not really. Another explosion. Closer. The sounds of fighting were clear now. Plasma weapons, screaming. "The enemy was in the palace, Commander," one of the senior guards said. "The law is clear. When faced with certain death and no hope of victory, withdrawal is permitted. We can regroup. Gather loyal forces. Return when we have strength." "That could take years," Zelthar said weakly. "Better than dying today." Jake saw the commander's resolve crumble. Zelthar looked at the Queen. "Your Majesty, you are going to leave," the Queen said. Not a question. A statement. "The law permits—" "The law," the Queen interrupted, was written by warriors who never imagined the royal guard would flee when their queen needed them most. Silence. Heavy and thick, the guards wouldn't meet her eyes. Go then, Queen Ashira said quietly. I release you from your duty. Run, save yourselves. One by one, the guards began to move toward the exits, toward the hidden passages that would take them out of the palace. They moved quickly, efficiently, following protocol even in their retreat. Jake watched in disbelief as the legendary royal guard abandoned their queen. Commander Zelthar was the last. He stood before the queen, his body language showing shame even through his alien form. Your Majesty, I am sorry. I have failed you. Yes, the queen said simply. You have. Zelthar turned and followed his guards into the shadows. Within minutes, the throne room was empty except for Queen Ashira and Jake Morrison. The queen walked slowly to her throne and sat. She looked small there, alone. You should go too, human. This is not your fight. You owe me nothing. Jake checked his rifle. Full charge. He had 3 spare power packs. His sidearm was loaded. He had his combat knife. Not much against 5,000 soldiers, but it was something. I took a job, Jake said. I finish it. The queen tilted her head. You will die. Probably. Why? You are not Valthern. You have no duty to me. No cultural obligation. Your people have known mine for only a few years. There is no reason for you to stay. Jake thought about how to explain it. How could he make an alien understand something that even humans didn't always get? On Earth we have a saying, he began. It's not about whether you can win. It's about whether you show up. Whether you stand when it matters. That is illogical. Yeah, Jake agreed. It probably is. But humans aren't always logical. We're stubborn. We don't like bullies. And we really don't like people who attack someone who can't fight back. I can fight back, the queen said with some pride. No offense, Your Majesty, but you're one person against an army. That's not a fight. That's an execution. Plasma fire erupted somewhere in the palace, close, maybe 2 corridors away. Jake moved to the throne room doors and activated the locking mechanism. Heavy bolts slid into place. It wouldn't hold long, but it would buy time. What are you doing? The queen asked. My job, Jake said. He started moving furniture. The Valthern throne was too heavy, but there were pillars and statues. He began setting up a defensive position. You know the layout better than me. Where are the weak points? Where will they try to breach? The main doors. The side entrance. The balcony access. Can you shoot? Jake asked. I am trained in ceremonial weapons. That'll do. Jake found a weapons locker hidden behind a panel. He pulled out a plasma rifle and handed it to the queen. It's like a ceremonial weapon, but it actually kills people. Point at what you want dead. Pull the trigger. Try not to hit me. The queen took the weapon. Her hands were shaking slightly. This is madness. Yes, Your Majesty. It really is. Jake finished barricading the main entrance. He set up a firing position that gave him good angles on both entry points. But sometimes madness is all you've got. The sounds of fighting were right outside now. Jake heard Valthern voices shouting. Orders being given. They were organizing for the assault. They will offer you safe passage, the queen said. General Korthos is not a monster. He wants me removed, but he has no quarrel with humans. He will let you leave if you surrender me. I'm not going to surrender you. Why? The queen's voice was almost pleading. Make me understand. Your species values life. You have families. People who care about you. Why throw that away for an alien queen you barely know? Jake checked his rifle one more time. He thought about his sister back on Earth. About the nieces and nephews he might never see again. About all the things he'd miss if he died here today. Because someone has to, he said finally. Your guards ran. Thousands of years of tradition and honor. And they ran the first time it got hard. Maybe it's cultural. Maybe they had reasons that made sense to them. But here's what I know. You're alone. You're facing an execution. And if I walk away, if I leave you here to die alone, then I'm no better than them, and I have to live with myself. The queen was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Humans are strange creatures. You have no idea, Your Majesty. The doors shuddered. Something heavy had hit them from outside. Jake raised his rifle. Here we go. Stay behind cover. Don't be a hero. And if they get past me, run. Find somewhere to hide. Maybe you'll get lucky. If I am to die, the queen said, I will die as a queen. Standing. Fair enough. The doors shuddered again, and again. Metal groaned. The locks were good, but they wouldn't hold forever. Jake could hear dozens of voices outside. Maybe more. This was going to be bad, but Jake Morrison had made his choice. He'd stood in worse places with worse odds. At least here he knew what he was standing for. One alien. The first soldiers through the door died quickly. Jake's rifle was set to burst fire, 3 plasma bolts per trigger pull. He aimed for center mass, just like in training. The Valthern soldiers wore armor, but plasma at close range punched through it. 3 soldiers down in 2 seconds. The rest pulled back. Jake heard shouting from the corridor. They hadn't expected resistance. They'd been told the Royal Guard fled. They thought this would be easy. Jake used the pause to assess. He'd bought maybe 30 seconds. The throne room had 3 entry points. Main doors, side entrance, and the balcony. He couldn't cover all 3 at once. He needed to change the game. Your Majesty, those hidden passages your guards used. Where do they go? The Queen pointed to a section of wall behind the throne. There, it leads to the old palace sections. Storage areas, maintenance tunnels. Can you open it? Yes, but open it. We're leaving. I will not run from— We're not running, Jake cut her off. We're repositioning. I can't defend 3 doors at once. But if we move into those tunnels, I can pick the ground we fight on, make them come to us one at a time. It's called defense in depth. The Queen hesitated, then moved to the wall. She pressed something Jake couldn't see. A section of stone swung inward, revealing darkness beyond. Plasma fire erupted from the main doors. The soldiers were testing his position. Jake returned fire, then grabbed the weapons locker. He dragged it toward the hidden passage. Come on. They moved into the darkness just as soldiers stormed the throne room from all 3 entrances. Jake waited until they were inside, then triggered something he'd prepared earlier. He'd found the throne room's old defense systems while exploring. They hadn't been used in centuries, but they still worked. Heavy blast doors slammed down, sealing all 3 entrances. The soldiers in the throne room were trapped. The ones outside couldn't get in. It would buy them maybe 10 minutes before they cut through. Jake activated his flashlight and looked around. They were in a narrow corridor carved from stone. Old. Very old. The walls were rough, unmarked. This part of the palace predated the modern sections by thousands of years. Where does this lead? Jake asked. Many places. The old palace was built in layers. Each generation added more. These tunnels connect everything. Good, we can use that. Jake's mind was already working. He'd learned urban combat in the Marines. How to use buildings and terrain. How to make the enemy come to you. The principles were the same. Even in an alien palace, they moved through the tunnels. Behind them, Jake could hear cutting torches working on the blast doors. He stopped at an intersection and set up a quick trap. A plasma grenade rigged to a tripwire. Simple but effective. You are buying time, the Queen observed. But for what? No help is coming. Maybe not. But time is a weapon too. Every minute I keep you alive is a minute for something to change. For help to arrive. For Korthos to make a mistake. You are an optimist. I'm a realist who doesn't quit. Jake moved them deeper into the tunnels. He found a defensible position, a narrow choke point with good sight lines. Here, we hold here for a while. The explosion echoed through the tunnels. Someone had found his trap. Jake heard screaming. Good. That would make them more cautious. Cautious enemies moved slower. The Queen settled behind cover, her plasma rifle ready. Tell me about Earth, she said quietly. If I am to die with a human, I should know more about your kind. Jake kept his eyes on the tunnel entrance. What do you want to know? Why do humans fight when they cannot win? Jake thought about it. Because winning isn't always the point. Sometimes it's about making a stand, showing that you won't back down. Earth history is full of last stands. Little battles that didn't change the war, but they mattered anyway. Examples? There was a place called the Alamo. Less than 200 defenders against thousands. They all died, but they held for days. Bought time for others to escape. To regroup, or Thermopylae. 300 Spartans holding a pass against an entire army. They died too, but they showed that the enemy could be fought, could be made to bleed. These stories honor death. They honor courage. Standing when everyone else runs. Fighting when fighting seems pointless. Jake paused. Your Royal Guard might have been trained for 6,000 years, but they were never tested. Not really. The first time they faced real fear, real danger, they broke. Humans break too sometimes, but we have stories about the ones who don't. We teach our children about them. We try to be like them. Movement in the tunnel. Jake fired. The plasma bolt lit up the darkness and caught a soldier in the shoulder. The Valthern went down screaming. The others pulled back. They will try to flank us, the Queen said. There are other routes through these tunnels. Then we move again. Jake checked his ammunition. 1 power pack left after this one. Maybe 300 shots total. Against 5,000 soldiers. The math wasn't good. Can you seal any of these passages? Some. The old defense systems still function in places. Show me. They moved through the tunnels for the next 2 hours. Jake fought a running battle, setting traps, taking shots, falling back. He used every trick he knew. Fake positions to draw fire. Diversions. Ambushes from unexpected angles. He made the soldiers afraid to advance too quickly, but he was getting tired. And wounded. A plasma bolt had grazed his leg. Another had burned his shoulder. The Queen had used her emergency medical supplies on him, but he was slowing down. They found a small chamber, maybe a storage room from centuries ago. Jake collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. The Queen sat beside him. You are injured, she said. I'll live. For a while anyway. Why do you continue? You must know this is hopeless. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. My sister asked me something before I left Earth. She asked if this job was worth dying for. I told her probably not. It was just a security gig. Standing around looking official. Easy money. And now it's not about the job. It's about you. One person alone against an army. If I leave, you die alone. And I can't do that. Can't live with that. The Queen's mandibles clicked softly. I have ruled for 2 years. In that time, I have learned that loyalty is rare. True loyalty, not the kind written into law or duty. My guards swore oaths. Beautiful oaths. They meant nothing when tested. You swore nothing. Yet here you are. Humans are weird like that. Yes, you are. The Queen looked at him with those strange compound eyes. Tell me more about your world. About the people you are dying far from. So Jake talked. He told her about his sister and her kids. About growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. About joining the Marines because he wanted to see the universe. About Earth's forests and oceans and mountains. About human music and art and the 1,000 small things that made life worth living. The Queen listened, and she talked too. About her childhood as a princess. About her father, the old king, who had ruled with an iron hand. About her dreams of opening the Valthern Empire to new ideas. About the resistance she'd faced from the old guard. About how lonely it was to be queen. They talked like two people who knew they might not see another dawn. Honest, raw, real. Then the soldiers found them again. Jake forced himself up. His legs screamed in protest, but he ignored it. Time to move, Your Majesty. They ran. Or Jake ran as best he could. The Queen helped support him. They moved through the ancient tunnels, the soldiers always behind them. Jake set more traps, triggered more defense systems, used the last of his grenades. His second power pack ran dry. He loaded his third and final one. Maybe 100 shots left. Not enough. Not nearly enough. They reached another defensive position. Jake set up behind a fallen pillar. The Queen took position beside him. How long have we been fighting? She asked. Jake checked his chronometer. 18 hours. 18 hours. The Queen's voice held wonder. One human, holding against thousands. They must think you are a demon. Good. Let them think that. Jake's hands were shaking from exhaustion. His wounds were bleeding again. But he raised his rifle. One more time. The soldiers came more carefully now. They'd learned to respect the human. They used suppressing fire. Moved in teams, professional and cautious. Jake took his shots, made them pay for every meter, but they kept coming. His rifle clicked empty. Jake dropped it and pulled his sidearm. Smaller, weaker, but it would have to do. Your Majesty, he said quietly, if they get past me, run. Don't look back. Just run and hide. Maybe you'll get lucky. No, the Queen said firmly. If we die together. You have shown me what true loyalty looks like. I will not dishonor that by running. Jake wanted to argue, but he was too tired. And honestly, he respected her choice. She'd found her courage again. That was worth something. The soldiers were at the entrance. Dozens of them. Jake raised his pistol. This was it. The last stand. No more tricks. No more running. Just him and an alien queen against an army. He thought of his sister. Of Earth. Of all the things he'd never do. Then he thought of the Queen sitting beside him refusing to run, and he smiled, because sometimes standing was enough. Sometimes just showing up and refusing to quit was the victory. Even if nobody else ever knew. Even if they died here in the dark, they'd know. That was enough. Jake Morrison took aim at the advancing soldiers and prepared to fire his last shots. But then something unexpected happened. Something he never could have predicted. The tunnel erupted into chaos. The rebel soldiers had been focused on Jake and the Queen. They weren't ready for an attack from behind. Commander Zelthar led the charge, his war scythe singing through the air. The Royal Guard fought with a fury Jake hadn't seen before. This wasn't the precise, controlled combat they'd trained for. This was desperate, savage, real. Jake used the confusion. He fired his pistol into the rebel ranks. Every shot counted. The rebels tried to form up, to respond to the threat from both sides, but they were trapped in the narrow tunnel. No room to maneuver. No way to bring their superior numbers to bear. The battle was short and brutal. When it was over, bodies littered the tunnel floor. Most were rebels. But Jake saw Royal Guard members down too. They'd paid a price to come back. Commander Zelthar approached, his armor scorched and dented. His war scythe was stained with blood. He stopped in front of Queen Ashira and dropped to one knee. The gesture was formal, but his voice shook with emotion. "Your Majesty, I have failed you. I abandoned my duty. I ran when I should have stood. I have brought dishonor to the Royal Guard and to myself." The Queen looked down at him. Her expression was unreadable. "You left me to die. Yes, and yet you returned." Why, Zelthar's mandibles clicked. "Because I watched. The palace security systems still function in some areas. I watched the human fight. One man against an army. I watched him hold position after position. Set trap after trap. I watched him bleed and keep fighting. And I felt shame, Your Majesty. Deep, terrible shame." The commander looked up at Jake. "I have trained for 80 years. I have studied warfare, strategy, honor. I thought I understood duty. But this human, this young creature from a primitive world showed me I understood nothing. He had no oaths to you, no cultural obligation, no glory to gain. And yet he stood. While I ran, he stood." Another guard stepped forward. Jake recognized him as one of the senior officers. "Many of us felt the same, Your Majesty. We fled to safety and found only shame waiting there. We could not live with what we had done, so we came back." "Not all of you," the Queen observed quietly. "No," Zelthar admitted. "Many still hide. They chose survival over honor. But those of us here chose to return. To die if necessary. To reclaim what we lost when we abandoned you." Queen Ashira was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "And what did you lose?" "Everything that matters," Zelthar said simply. Jake lowered his pistol. He was swaying on his feet, running on nothing but adrenaline. His wounds were catching up to him. The Queen noticed and moved to support him. "The human requires medical attention," she said. "We have supplies," one of the guards said. He brought forward a medical pack. Another guard, one trained in field medicine, began working on Jake's wounds. The Valthern medicine worked differently than human medicine, but pain was pain. The drugs they gave him helped. "Status report," the Queen ordered. Zelthar stood. "We number 43 guards, Your Majesty. We came through the eastern tunnels. The rebels control most of the palace. General Korthos is in the Great Hall organizing his forces. He knows the human is still fighting. It has him confused and angry." "How many rebels?" Jake asked. His voice was rough. "Perhaps 4,000 remain in the palace. Another 1,000 guard the perimeter. They have heavy weapons, air support. We are still vastly outnumbered. But we are no longer helpless," the Queen said. She stood straighter, her confidence returning. "We have loyal guards. We have the human. And we have time to plan. Your Majesty," Zelthar said carefully, "I must say this. The human has earned more honor in 18 hours than I have in my entire life. He shamed us, shamed me, and in doing so he saved not just your life but our souls. The Royal Guard will never forget what happened here. Never forget who stood and who ran." Jake wanted to say something, but he was too tired. The medic had finished patching him up. The drugs were making everything feel distant and soft. He needed rest. But there was no time for rest. "We need a plan," he said, forcing his mind to focus. 43 guards and me against 4,000. Still bad odds. "The odds were worse when you were alone," one of the guards pointed out. "Fair point." Jake looked at the Queen. "What assets do we have? What can we use that the rebels don't know about?" the Queen thought. The old defense systems. Not all of them function, but some do. Blast doors, force fields, security measures installed by my ancestors. Can you access them from here? From the central control room. It is in the heart of the old palace, deep underground. Can we get there without fighting through the main rebel forces? Yes, the tunnels connect to it. Jake's mind started working. He was a security contractor, not a general. But he'd learned tactics in the Marines. He'd studied asymmetric warfare. How to fight when you were outgunned and outnumbered. Here's what we do, he said slowly. We get to that control room. We use the defense systems to seal off sections of the palace, break the rebel forces into smaller groups. Then we hit them piece by piece. Make them afraid to move. Make them think we're everywhere. Guerrilla warfare, Zelthar said. He'd studied human military history. It could work. If we can survive long enough. It's what we've got. Jake looked at the assembled guards. I know you want to redeem yourselves. But redemption doesn't come from dying stupidly. It comes from winning. From getting your queen to safety. Can you do that? The guards looked at each other. Then as one, they knelt before the queen. We can. We will. They moved through the tunnels toward the control room. Jake walked with support from 2 guards. He was in bad shape, but he could still shoot. Still think. That was enough for now. The control room was ancient. Walls covered in symbols Jake couldn't read. Panels that looked like they belonged in a museum. But when the queen touched them, they lit up. Screens showed views of the palace. Hundreds of cameras, most still functional. Jake saw the throne room on one screen. Saw rebel soldiers setting up a command post. Saw General Korthos himself, massive and intimidating, giving orders. Can you lock doors remotely? Jake asked. Yes. Can you activate defenses? Some of them. Good. Here's what we're going to do. Jake pointed at the screens. We split their forces. Trap groups in different sections. Then we hit them when they're isolated and confused. Make them think we have more fighters than we do. They spent an hour planning. Jake used his knowledge of urban combat. Zelthar added his understanding of Valthern tactics. The Queen controlled the systems, showing them what was possible. It was desperate. It was risky. But it was a plan. One more thing, Jake said. We need to get word out. Let the rest of the capital know the Queen is alive. Let them know she's fighting back. The communications are down, Zelthar said, not all of them. Jake had noticed something on the screens. That tower, the old communication array. Is it still functional? The Queen checked. Partially. It uses ancient technology. The rebels may not have thought to disable it. Then we use it. Broadcast a message. Show the capital that their queen hasn't fallen. That might inspire others to act. They started the operation. The Queen sealed blast doors throughout the palace, dividing the rebel forces. Automated defense turrets activated in some corridors. Ancient weapons that still worked after thousands of years. The rebels were caught by surprise. Then the Royal Guard struck. Small teams hitting isolated groups. Fast attacks, then withdrawal. They used the tunnels to move unseen. Hit here, disappear, hit somewhere else. The rebels started to panic. They didn't know how many guards had returned. They couldn't coordinate between trapped groups. Jake led one team. His wounds slowed him, but his tactics worked. They ambushed a rebel squad, took their weapons, vanished before reinforcements arrived. Hit another group, vanished again. The rebels started shooting at shadows. General Korthos was furious. Jake watched him on the screen, shouting at his officers. The general had expected an easy coup. Instead, his forces were being picked apart by an enemy he couldn't see. Couldn't predict. Couldn't catch. The human tactics, Korthos roared on one screen. They're using human tactics. Jake smiled grimly. Yes, they were. The broadcast went out. Queen Ashira's face appeared on every screen in the capital. She stood tall, regal, undefeated. She spoke of loyalty and honor. Of standing against tyranny. Of the human who had shown the Valthern what true courage looked like. I stand, she said. I fight. And I call upon all loyal Valthern to stand with me. General Korthos has betrayed the throne, but he has not won. He will never win, because some things cannot be conquered. Honor, duty, the will to fight for what is right. Jake watched the message broadcast, watched it spread through the capital. And on the streets, things began to change. Loyal military units started moving against the rebels. Citizens took up arms. The palace wasn't isolated anymore. Korthos's forces found themselves under attack from multiple directions. In orbit, Captain Ryan Blake received the message. The Defiant prepared to deploy Marines. The situation had changed. This wasn't an internal matter anymore. The legitimate Queen had requested assistance. That gave them legal authority to act. Everything was shifting. What had seemed like a certain rebel victory was turning into a pitched battle. And at the center of it all was one human security contractor who had refused to run. Jake Morrison collapsed in the control room, finally unable to continue. Jake woke to the sound of silence. After 18 hours of explosions and gunfire, the quiet was almost frightening. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his body. Every wound reminded him it existed. "Don't move," a voice said. Female. Human. He forced his eyes to focus and saw Lisa Grant sitting beside his bed. "You've been out for 3 days. 3 days?" Jake's voice was rough. His throat felt like sandpaper. 3 days. You had plasma burns, blood loss, exhaustion. The doctors said you should have been dead twice over. But apparently humans are too stubborn to die when they're supposed to. Jake looked around. He was in a medical facility. Human equipment mixed with Valthern technology. "Where am I?" "The Palace Medical Wing." "Well, what's left of it?" Lisa handed him water. "Drink slowly." The water tasted amazing. Jake drank, then asked the question that mattered. "The Queen?" "Alive, safe, thanks to you." Lisa smiled. "You missed quite a show. After you passed out, everything happened fast." She told him the story. How the Royal Guard, inspired by Jake's stand, had fought with a fury nobody expected. How loyal military units throughout the capital had risen up against the rebels. How Captain Blake had deployed Marines from the Defiant, citing the defense of human personnel as justification. General Korthos tried to make a final stand in the Great Hall. Lisa continued. But he was surrounded. The Royal Guard offered him the chance to surrender. He refused. Tried to fight his way out. Didn't make it. Dead? Very. Commander Zelthar killed him personally. Single combat. The way Valthern honor demands. Lisa leaned back. The coup collapsed within 6 hours after the Queen's broadcast. Turns out most of Korthos's soldiers weren't true believers. They were just following orders. When they saw they were losing, they surrendered. Jake absorbed this. How many died? Too many. Several hundred Royal Guard, maybe 1,000 rebels. Civilian casualties were light, thankfully. The fighting stayed mostly confined to the Palace District. Lisa's expression grew serious. But Jake, you need to understand something. What you did here changed everything. I just did my job. No, you did a lot more than that. Lisa pulled up a screen and showed him news feeds. Galactic news services. Human networks. Everyone was talking about the Valthern coup. But more specifically, they were talking about Jake. One human security guard holds off an army for 18 hours, refuses to abandon his post when the legendary Royal Guard flees, single-handedly keeps the Queen alive until help arrives. Lisa scrolled through headlines. You're famous, Jake, across the entire galaxy. The human who showed everyone what courage really means. Jake felt uncomfortable. I didn't do it for fame. I know. That's what makes it matter. Lisa turned off the screen. The Valthern are embarrassed. Their elite warriors ran. A human they considered primitive stayed. It's forcing them to re-evaluate everything they thought they knew about humans. About themselves. The door opened. Commander Zelthar entered, followed by several other Royal Guard officers. They all wore fresh armor, polished to perfection, but there was something different about them. Less arrogance. More humility. Zelthar approached the bed and, to Jake's shock, knelt. The other guards did the same. Security Officer Morrison, Zelthar said formally, I come to offer thanks and apologies. Thanks for saving our Queen. Apologies for abandoning our duty and leaving you to face the enemy alone. You came back, Jake said. That's what matters. We came back because you shamed us. Because you showed us what we had forgotten. That duty is not about tradition or protocol. It is about standing when standing is hard. About protecting those who need protection even when the cost is high. Zelthar stood. The Royal Guard has been disbanded. All members who fled have been removed from service. Those of us who returned are being reformed into a new guard. One that understands honor comes from actions, not words. And we would be honored if you would help train us. I'm just a security contractor, Jake said. No, you are a warrior who understands what many of us forgot. War is not about glory. It is about doing what must be done even when it costs everything. Zelthar's mandibles clicked. Please teach us. Jake looked at the assembled guards, saw genuine respect in their alien eyes. "I'll think about it." The guards filed out. Lisa stayed behind. "The Queen wants to see you. When you're ready." "I'm ready now." "Jake, you can barely sit up." "Then help me stand." Lisa sighed but helped him into a wheelchair. They moved through the palace corridors. Jake saw repair crews working everywhere. Blast damage, plasma burns, evidence of the battle. But also something else. Valthern citizens and soldiers saluting as he passed, showing respect. They reached the throne room. It had been repaired, but Jake could still see scorch marks on the walls. Evidence of where he'd made his stands, where he'd bled. Queen Ashira sat on her throne, but she stood as Jake entered. She descended the steps to meet him. The formality of a queen addressing a subject, but her voice was warm. "Security Officer Morrison, you honor us with your presence, Your Majesty." Jake tried to stand from the wheelchair. Lisa pushed him back down. "Please do not strain yourself. You have done more than enough." The Queen came closer. "I wish to ask you a question, one that has troubled me since you woke." "Yes, Your Majesty?" "Why? You have answered this before, but I still struggle to understand. You are human. You had no obligation, no cultural duty, no promise of reward. You could have fled with the guards. No one would have blamed you. Yet you stayed. You fought. You nearly died. Why?" Jake thought about how to answer. How to make her understand something that was hard to put into words. "On Earth," he began slowly, "we have a saying. It's not about the dog in the fight. It's about the fight in the dog. It means that size doesn't matter. Strength doesn't matter. What matters is whether you keep fighting when things get hard." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I stayed because you needed someone to stay. Because running would have been easy, and easy isn't always right. Because in that moment, I had to choose what kind of person I wanted to be, and I chose to be someone who stands." The Queen's mandibles clicked softly. "I have learned much from you, human. About courage, about honor, about the difference between following tradition and understanding why tradition exists. The Royal Guard followed protocol when they fled. The law permitted it, but you followed something deeper, something that exists in the heart, not in rules." She straightened. "I hereby offer you the position of Chief Security Advisor to the Valthern throne. You will help rebuild the Royal Guard. Teach them what you know. Show them how to be worthy of their name. Your Majesty, I appreciate it, but the position comes with full citizenship, a residence in the palace, access to all resources you need, and a salary that reflects the value of what you have done." The Queen's tone made it clear this wasn't really a request. "You saved my life. You saved my kingdom. You gave my people a lesson in courage they will never forget. Now help me ensure that lesson is not wasted." Jake looked at Lisa, who shrugged. "Your contract with the human embassy is technically over. You're a free agent." He thought about it, about going back to Earth, about comfortable security jobs where nobody shot at him, about peace and quiet and safety. Then he thought about the Royal Guard, about warriors who had forgotten what they were supposed to be, about a queen trying to change her empire for the better, about making a difference. "I'll do it," Jake said, "but on one condition." "Name it." "You tell the Valthern people the truth. Not just about me, about the guards who ran, about fear and failure and coming back from it. People need to know that courage isn't never being afraid. It's being afraid and doing the right thing anyway." Queen Ashira considered this, then nodded. "Agreed. The story will be told truthfully. The shame and the redemption. Both matter." Over the following months, Jake worked with the reformed Royal Guard. He taught them tactics, flexibility, how to think instead of just following protocol. But more importantly, he taught them about duty, real duty, the kind that came from inside, not from laws or tradition. Commander Zelthar became his closest ally. The Valthern commander had found redemption in returning, but he carried the shame of fleeing for the rest of his life. He channeled that shame into becoming a better leader, a better warrior, a better guard. The story spread across the galaxy. The human who stood when aliens fled. Different species reacted differently. Some were inspired. Some were embarrassed. Some were angry that a primitive species had shown up their warriors. But humans everywhere felt pride. One of their own had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of. Not with superior technology or numbers, just with stubborn determination and a refusal to quit. Jake's sister sent him a message. She'd seen the news, seen him interviewed, Seen the galaxy talking about her little brother. You asked me once if the job was worth dying for, she wrote. You found out it wasn't about the job. It was about who you are, about what you stand for. I'm proud of you. Mom would be proud of you. You showed everyone what it means to be human. Jake read the message in his quarters, a suite in the palace overlooking the capital. He'd been awarded medals, honors, titles, but none of it meant as much as that simple message from his sister. 6 months after the coup, Jake stood in the training yard watching the Royal Guard drill. They moved with the same precision as before. But now,